Welcome to Paradigm Playbook, the podcast on the business of sports. With 50-plus years of experience, Steve Cook shares insights weekly, featuring top playmakers shaping the industry. Get ready to script your next play. Now, here's your host.
Hello and welcome to Paradigm Playbook. I'm your host, Steve Cook, along with Coach Tim Neiman, and I'm really excited about this week. And I was listening to Tim's podcast, and I just got really charged up because they were talking about the transfers from what you learn in sports and coaching and how it applies directly to business owners, from leadership to training to coaches. So there's so much we can dig into. Tim is a longtime coach, collegiate coach. I think I saw somewhere 860 some wins. Not sure I'm exact, but there's a lot of wins in there. Coach of the year several times. He's the host of the Straight Line podcast. He's an author of a book. He's a public speaker. He's out there. Tim's doing it all, and apparently, like me, he doesn't understand the term retirement, so that's a good thing for all of us. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you, Steve. I really appreciate you having me on, and I've spent a lot of time coaching between the lines. So I had 36 years at DeSales as a head coach. You mentioned the wins. There's a lot of losses in there, too, where I wasn't very good that day. I had 3 years as a pitching coach at Kutztown, then I coached American Legion prior to that in Quakertown. Retired from DeSales August the 4th, and just made a decision. It was time. I thought it was time to move on. Spent a lot of glorious, wonderful years there. Great people. I loved it. And I've spent the better half of my adult life there, and it was fantastic. I thought it was just time to move on. And then we run into October. My mother passed away. She was on hospice care, 91. Great life. And 3 days later, I was diagnosed with prostate cancer on top of it. So I just completed 2 weeks ago, 28 days of radiation. So I'm doing good. I'm on the mend, on the rebound, trying to get some energy back and that sort of thing. So when I retired August 4th, I had a conversation with Blue Book baseball Blue Book guys. It's like Blue Book Media Group now, it's called. And they were like looking for people to host podcasts. They're in conjunction with WNEW out of New York City as well. It's an internet radio show. And I said, okay. I never thought that I would be doing that sort of thing. I have the 2 books and I like public speaking, and I do the color for the Iron Pigs. I'm the color analyst for about 35 games a year on TV. So it's cool. So I had a little background, but I never did a podcast, never dreamed of it. Who the heck knows? So I said, sure, let's give it a whirl. Probably recorded the first one maybe end of September, early October. And away we went. It took off. There's no shortage of guests. That's one big thing. And I've kind of stuck to the guns, the theme of straight lines, to life lessons, leadership, business. And of course, we mix in a little baseball depending upon the guest. And I really enjoy not talking X's and O's. I've done it all my life. I certainly can, but I really enjoy other stuff. I mean, yesterday I recorded Stefan Rapaglia, who runs Play Global. He's involved with Old World Baseball. It's about European baseball, making little leagues in Africa, and South Africa, Nairobi. I mean, it's just, those kinds of things are fun. Yesterday, dropped Ryan Brownlee from the American Baseball Coaches Association. That one went live yesterday. Next week is the president and CEO of the Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, the 5th largest in the country. And we talk business and leadership. And so that's what kind of fulfills me a little, Steve, and I enjoy that a lot. Since we began, we've just started to do some marketing things, and I'm ready to embark on a sales program. We've reached 250,000 people in less than 4 months.
Wow.
Pretty good. For social media, newsletter, all areas where, heck, I didn't know. I'm just having fun.
And I like the one comment on your website that says, this is not a baseball podcast.
Look, I can do it. I can line up baseball guys and talk to X's and O's until the cows come home. But I had a little Zoom call with a guy named Joe Ferrero. He's a really good man, a communications guru, and he's noted for asking damn good questions. That's his thing. So I'm like, I like that. So I don't listen to some of mine. We got on a little bit of a call, and he said, let me ask you one question. He goes, if you'd ever monetize this thing, which is now where I'm at, would you continue to do it? I said, absolutely. I said, I'm enjoying it. It's fun. It fulfills me, keeps me busy, keeps me out of trouble. So that's the beauty of it all. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I think thus the thing has grown the way it has, probably because of that.
It's great for your fans and listeners out there. I'm going to clarify a couple things because my audience, mostly entrepreneurs in the sports world, a lot of them own small sports businesses. Not many of them are baseball academies like I am, but there's gymnastic club, a dance school, a swim school. So they're all in business. They all have an equal passion. And I think the leadership business side of it overflows both. Another point of clarification is that the Blue Book that you mentioned, which sponsors your podcast, I believe, is like the Bible of baseball. I was in the baseball business other than what I'm in now for a while. And anything you wanted to know, what hotel the Yankees are staying in when they visit Atlanta, it tells you that. There's everything in there in the Blue Book. So it is the Bible of baseball. It's a great book. Unlike you, they're trying to keep baseball out of your podcast. I'm talking my owners. So I'm trying to squeeze a little baseball into everybody. So the people that have a gymnastics school with a floor exercise mat that is the perfect size, I tell them, for a baseball diamond for 4-year-olds. So why not start baseball at 4 years old? I think it's easy. Let me start with this question. Can you explain to me straight lines? Why is that the title?
It's again another concept that has blown up. I'm actually speaking at a chamber event May 6th, and it's going to be a half-hour talk on straight lines. If there's a little bit of a 3-minute trailer telling you about the podcast, it's on YouTube. You'll find it on Apple, Spotify, wherever. So I was, even as a young guy growing up, baseball by itself is amazing. So I was always enamored by the straight lines on the field, how the grass was cut, and, the lines, and, I talk about the symmetry of the stadium and all that kind of stuff. I just say to my wife, Roseanne, look at those lines. Look at how the grass is cut. So I was always enamored by that. So thus straight lines. There's the story really spawned from all this when I was writing my second book called Team Killers. Pretty good, if I do say so myself, right? But it's pretty good. It's about stuff that tell me what not to do, right? Every book's got 5 ways to do this, 10 ways to do that, 20 ways to do. How about give me some things not what to look for? How about that? So I did that. But in the end of that, I tell a story of straight lines. So I was a third base coach for the Allentown Ambassadors, independent team in Allentown. The manager was Ed Ott. He was a catcher from the Pirates, the We Are Family 79 Pirates. He was an interesting guy. That's another book. But we were in the North Shore, in Lynn, Massachusetts, playing the North Shore Spirit. And if you were 10 minutes early, you were probably 5 minutes late, right? So we got off the bus and at the ballpark, and typically we were there early. So I always threw my stuff in the locker room, and I would just walk the stadium, see the people, observe. Nice ballpark though, and it had rained the night before. So I walked across the field. We were in left center field behind the fence. Walked across the field, sat in the bleachers, the grandstand area with a roof and all that. And on the first base side, I'm just sitting there watching, observing, and there's a bunch of staff out there wiping down the seats, making sure everything's good, and including a guy like you and me. A guy looks a little business-ish, not a guy that's going to give you some popcorn at the game or tap a beer. It's not that guy, but he was doing the same thing. He's wiping down seats and making sure everything looks great. Boy, that was interesting. I get up and walk across the field back to the locker room. He starts walking along with me, and I just said, look, life's managing perception, and I'm impressed with the perception that you were putting together here. You care about the fans. You care. And he said, well, I don't get that very often. I'm the owner of the club. So he puts out his hand, shakes my hand, and I said, that's what it's all about. You care. That's my straight line. You care. So we keep walking, and I find out later he's the CEO of then State Street Global, big financial company in Boston. So does this guy need to own an independent professional team? Probably not. But he still cared enough to make sure the presentation of the game that was coming up, his fans, his customers were comfortable. And to me, Steve, the straight lines is a metaphor for that. And my metaphor and my straight lines, I think people care. It's interesting. I've recorded 27th guest yesterday. And at the end of it, I always ask them, what does straight lines mean to you? And I've gotten 27 different answers. But they're all right. They're all correct. It's everybody's perception. It's really interesting to hear them talk about that. And, thus the brand has grown. The concept is on fire. And it's kind of fun, neat to see.
I'm going to hold my take on straight lines till I am on your podcast so I can save that answer. But I've been developing it ever since I realized that was the name of the podcast. So I found it interesting. One of the things, and when Tim and I just have reconnected and we met a bunch of years ago, probably over 20 years ago, one of the reasons we connected is I was working at the time with a company called ATEC, which is athletic training equipment company, and they made pitching machines for baseball. Really good people. And at the time, they provided most close to the pitching machines, to the major leagues and minor leagues. So one of the things I got to do was go to trade shows and coaches clinics. And one year I visited every minor league complex in Florida, which is, for a young sales guy, that's a thrill. But one of the things I got to do is work the trade shows with them. They had professional coach advisors. So the two guys that I remember getting to know the best were Jim Lefevre and Bill Verdon. And I'm sure you remember them. And so when you think straight lines, Bill was like one of those classic coaches that, you know what, if you want to be on Bill's side, stay between the lines in everything in life. So anyway, that's not my take on it, but I remember Bill doing that. So let me ask you another question. When did you take up speaking? So one of my things for business owners is learning to speak, I think, is an essential ingredient with running a business. So when did you start? I mean, I know you're speaking to your team and other coaches, but what gave you the courage or the impetus to get outside of that and go talk to a business group?
Again, after all these years, I realized all the things in baseball and sports in general parallel business. They really do. And so that's kind of why I wrote the two books. I always did like to speak. It's funny, I was really shy growing up. I didn't really engage a whole lot, but coaching kind of forces you to do those kinds of things. And I always enjoyed speaking in front of people and reading the audience, and it just felt fairly natural. But that was always about baseball or some kind of baseball related leadership to a travel organization or somebody else. But now I'll be in front of probably 200 folks May 6th, and I'm going to South Bend, Indiana next June. So a bunch of athletic directors and coaches. And I don't know, I also always felt like I wanted to do it. And I think if you've got the information, the experience, the ability to share stories is big, and your life lessons, and then correlate that into the business world, I think it gives you the confidence and the courage to go ahead and say, look, here's what the parallels are. And they're pretty obvious a lot of times. And I think that's what it is more than anything. I feel pretty confident about it. One of the things coaching, in the games, there's always butterflies, right? You have butterflies.
Yeah.
So I was working with a young lady in Orlando about the speaking business. And she goes, what do you want out of this? What do you want to? I said, I just want to make sure I still can find opportunities to have butterflies. So when I know I take the stage, it's like the game, it's game time, and people are depending upon you to deliver something, maybe educationally entertain them somehow, whatever. I'll have butterflies. And I'm excited about that part of it. So I think it was the speaking after coaching here now fills that void a little bit to give me those butterflies. Plus, I think the message is really good. I'll talk about straight lines in my speeches. I just think it's not only professional, it's personal as well. You got to have straight lines personally. But the path to success is not a straight line. We know that. There's a bunch of squiggly marks.
Yeah.
But how fast can you change the tire? How can I get back on the highway? How can I make sure things are going smoothly to keep the train on the tracks? I'll give you one quick other story, an example. So my mom, who passed away in October, 91 years young, she was terrific, but she loved black and white milkshakes, right? She lives in Quakertown, so I'm closer to Allentown. So I'd visit her every Sunday at minimum and stop at a fast food to get black and white shake for her and myself and whatever. 3 consecutive Sundays, Steve, same fast food. I won't dime them out, but 3 straight Sundays. First time, they didn't have any mix. Okay, I'll give them a mulligan. Second time, I had the milkshakes. I think I had 3 or 4 of them. It was just me in the car. You have any carriers? Oh, we're out of carriers. Okay, so I'll just let it spill over my car. Third time I go, the machine's down. 3 consecutive issues, 3 consecutive weeks. And I'm thinking to myself, those are not straight lines. How minimal that is. But to me, it was a systemic problem that may have bigger things going on. Now, so they survived because of location. If they weren't in a location they'd have no shot. It makes you wonder what else is going on. What else is going on that you just overlooked? Those are things that the customer takes away. It's like, all right, I'll just go down the street to the other one and see how that one goes. And maybe you lost somebody over a milkshake because I didn't have the mix. Somebody didn't look to get the mix. Somebody didn't look at the inventory to get the cup holders, the carriers. And somebody didn't make sure the machine was maintained. Again, a very small sample, but I think once that's ingrained in your mind, straight lines, you see it everywhere, absolutely everywhere. Okay, what can I do better? How can I anticipate? And again, I got a flat tire. Let's get that baby changed and get back on the highway.
I forget who the well-known speakers talks about the idea of butterflies or nerves or whatever. And I remember they asked a great athlete, I don't know if it was Michael Jordan or whatever, they said, you're walking up there to take the foul shot that's going to determine the game. Are you nervous? And his answer was, says, yeah, I'm excited. And in reality, nerves and excitement stimulate the same body response in you. So if you're not nervous, if you don't have butterflies, then we should worry about you a little bit.
Yeah, I would say to that too, those aren't straight lines, are they? If you don't feel that little bit of nervousness or butterflies, maybe you don't really care.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't belong up there. I always said when I was in sporting goods, I probably met you there. Used to work for Schuylkill Valley back in the day when they
Oh,
were
yeah.
huge. Yeah, they were huge. I used to say every order is important to the person that orders it, whether it's a dozen T-shirts for the cheerleading team or 100 football uniforms head to toe, which is a big number. It's still important to the person. The cheerleaders are just as excited as the AD or the football coach. So every order is important. And if you don't care about that, then, what are we doing? You need to move on. And I think in the speaking business is be the same thing. I'd get up. So if there's 10 people or 100 people or 200 people or 500 people, it's important to them, right? It's important to those folks.
I think I picked this up from one of your podcasts, and I don't know if you said it this way, but the straight line between preparation and performance and success, it's all in a straight line. And we're in a situation in youth sports right now. They're playing more games than they are practicing, and we need to get back to there's a joy in practicing and preparing. And, there's a straight line there that the more you practice, there was a great story about Jerry Rice. Somebody went on the field and watched the 49ers are doing their square out drills and throwing the passes. Every receiver catches it, couple steps, drops the ball, gets back in line. Jerry Rice comes up, catches the ball, turns the other way and sprints to the end zone. And they kept going this over and over again. And he did it every time. And someone asked him, what's the deal? Everybody else is doing this. And he said, they only pay me for one thing, getting this ball in that end zone. So that's what I should be practicing. I was talking to a group of a softball team last night. It's one of the things I said, there's a reason why you run out every ball you hit. And because you don't know which one's going to be an error. So you run out every one. And that's another straight line. It's practice like you play.
Game of repetition, right? It's a game of repetition.
I have not read your books, but I plan to. I wasn't aware of them. That's another great outcome of me reconnecting with you. But in the second book, Team Killers, there's lessons on culture so a baseball coach or manager is responsible for the culture, just like a business owner is responsible for that culture. And if you get too much in the weeds and you don't get a 10,000-foot view, maybe you're not aware of your culture. Is that part of the story behind?
A little bit of that. I'd say yes. I talk about things like transfer of blame, which I've been talking about for 20 years. Not my fault. And you see that in every business and every team and organization. It's not my fault, somebody else's fault.
We just saw that in the World Baseball Classic, didn't we?
Yeah. Nobody takes responsibility for that sort of thing. Another thing to talk about is don't get bloody. People at the drop of a hat did all these things, transfer the blame because, they transfer blame to a waitress because the food was cold. It ain't her fault or his fault, but they want to get bloody about it. They want to get the manager out here. There's many things that aren't worth getting bloody over. Just let it be and move on. And I talk about solutions to kinds of things where it's had to do with one of my teams. A couple of times I did this where he could just sense it. Chemistry is important and it's nice to have. I don't know how to coach it. I know it when I see it. And I think that's the easier part. So we'd have teams where, there was some infighting, transferring the blame, all those kinds of things. Just a lot of complaining about. Really, and we need to stop this. So I used to go in a classroom and I drew a garbage can on a chalkboard back in the day. And I said, this is it. Whatever you don't like, because the whole team meeting, just me and them, whatever you don't like, tell us. Let's go. Speak up. And I threw up a couple things in there to break the ice. And before I had about a dozen of these things, that little stuff that was bothering him in a broad scope of things didn't matter. Collectively, it was a problem. All these things they were focused on that preventing us from doing well. So I started writing them around a trash can. I put all these things that bothered them. And then I drew an arrow into the trash can and said, all right, we're dumping this. We're dumping the T-shirts. We're dumping stretching out. Whatever it was that was bothering them. And then I drew a lid and put it on top. Said, that's it. We're not going to participate in any of this stuff anymore. We aired it out and we're done with it. All right. And believe it or not, it really helped a lot. You could see a collective deep breath and away we went on our business. So I think don't get bloody, trying to move on from things that don't matter that much. They really don't. And being accountable, involving the kids in terms of leadership. We'll all have those troublemakers, perhaps. I think the good Lord always gives us one or two to keep us honest, but it's one of them. But I think if you give them some accountability, something there. Maybe it's just being on time for the clinic, making sure we got everything, whatever. Give them a little responsibility. They step up a lot. So I talk about that as well. And the transfer of blame creates the drama. The drama creates panic. The panic creates fear. And it's just this domino effect that ends up with contamination. Now you got a problem right at the end of it all. I also talk about letting people go. And I talk about when I've had to cut kids or I let them go, I call them roster adjustments. But they would get up and shake my hand. And really, because I spoke to them as somebody that cared and treat them like a human being. And they were able to leave with some dignity. And I think that can happen as well in business. You might not have the right fit. You probably don't. Sometimes we're not going to have them. Give them a little dignity to walk away and say, look, I'm still here if you need me.
I always run out of time in these podcasts, but I got like 100 questions. I'm going to dig into one other issue. So one of the issues that we have in business and in sports business is hiring. So hiring coaches come from a physical education background, Westchester grad. My parents were gym teachers. In fact, I just wrote a baseball book, but it's mostly what I learned as a gym teacher. My thought or my question is, I think there's some hiccups in coaching where we're not getting the full training, and they may know how to hold the bat for a bunt or how to turn a double play or those things, but the communication skills that all coaches, it's when do you yell and when do you whisper? It's how do coaches learn that, or is that being taught anywhere? Or
That's a really good question. I think it comes from wherever the leader is that they're working for sometimes. I think that's the culture. I go back to when I was recruiting players, and I think the same holds true for recruiting employees or getting them. So I worked for Joe Consoli, who's signed more major leaguers than any scout that ever walked the planet for the Pirates. This is back in the 80s. I'll never forget, he told me a couple things, but one thing specifically, he said, Timmy, after all the evaluation is done, find out what kind of a person he is. And I never, ever forgot that. And I think, for instance, we'll go watch a kid play. We really like him play, and his makeup, as they call it, is not good. And I think you can apply some of that same psychology to hiring, and they fool you sometimes. What do we know about people? And I think a lot of this gets buried on online applications, and man, everybody looks good on paper usually, right? So I think this face-to-face communication, as you say, is key. I think kids are learning, grew up with iPads and phones and computers and you name it. That's the way they communicate. So you got to meet them there a little bit, but that's not going to get the job done when they're between the lines and they have to talk to an umpire or talk to parents, which is another really critical thing. So the communication part of it is as important, I think, as what they know to give to their players between the lines.
yeah, one of the things that I tell young people, we hire a lot of high school, college kids at Grand Slam, but one of the things I tell them, when you're looking at a job, look at the person you're going to work for. And if the opportunity arose, would you work for them for free? Would you volunteer to be on their staff for a week, a month, a day? And I did not grow up a baseball player. I was a gymnast. So I wanted to learn baseball. So I would volunteer to work at camps for baseball coaches. I worked for Carl Garano at Westchester. I worked at a lot of college baseball camps just so I could learn from them how they talked and and I end up learning a lot of baseball because that comes through. But I think so much is put on the head coach. So when you're looking at hiring for a business, one of the things that maybe this is good advice, maybe it's not, I don't know. But if they played a sport, look who they played for. I would say if I went and wanted to hire someone and I could find a player that played for you, that may be a better candidate than someone who played for someone else, even if they don't use you as a reference. I try to tell people to look at what they've done, who they played for, and what do you think of that coach? And if you like what they've done, maybe that's the best sign you can get. I don't know. That's just a thought.
I really like that, Steve. I think I always tell our guys, I've got a lot of them now after 36 years. Once they played for me, they always play for me. And I'm an oft-used reference. I can help you or I may be able to hurt you.
Yeah.
So I think reputation is huge. And the quicker these young folks can figure that out, the better. They can never take that away from you. Young people today are quick to kind of the travel ball mentality. If they don't like it, they leave and they go somewhere else or start a new team. Or grass is always greener. How about you dig in? People say, how you doing, coach? You hanging in there? I don't like that. I don't hang in. I dig in. So how about digging in and making the most of where you're at? Be where your feet are. Big term, obviously, but do that. And instead, now, the minute there's some adversity or something they don't like, they leave. And I think there's something to be said for what your way you're looking at it, the longevity. And I won a lot of games at DeSales. I don't remember most of them. But I do remember the kids. And of all the players, if you picked out a name, I could tell you all about them. And I always tell them, I'm not getting all up in your social media stuff while you play for me. Just know when it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah.
But when you graduate, you will be my Facebook friend because I want to know what you're doing. I want to know where you're working. I want to know if you're married, have kids, family. And I want you to know I'm here if you need me, always. So I think that's really important.
You know, we are the product of what we accept. And I think maybe I heard this from Zach. He said, if you're accepting bat flips from a 10-year-old, then you're going to see him in college. So get used to it. You can't complain later if you accept it at an early age. The last question is, if you had 2 minutes to talk to a young athlete going out into the business world, what's your 2-minute advice that gives them and they can take to the next level?
That's a great question, Steve. That's for sure. I mean, if you're going to the next level, whoever you work for, again, you work for them or you are representing them and you need to support them in any way possible. I think it's great to be in an environment where there might be some inclusion where, you may go to an employee and say, what do you think? So now they feel part of the process. They feel part of it. And you've got to be able to do that. Sometimes you learn what not to do. And that's okay. That's part of the learning process. That's okay. But you need to be able to be supportive of where you're at because, like in baseball, you always say you never know who's watching. Guess what? You never know who's watching you perform your job. You don't know. And if I go up to the drive-through window and a waitress or a waiter that just doesn't present well, and all of a sudden he surfaces somewhere else, I don't know about that. That's not good. So be supportive of the person you are. Be patient. Everything is self-gratification, right? They want stuff now. It doesn't work that way. It's a process.
Awesome answer. One of my favorite books was written by Bo Eason. He wrote a book called There's No Plan B for Your A Game. One of the things I took out of there was he said, if you consider every day as a tryout, it's like someone's judging you today. So tryouts never end, whether it's in baseball or in a job. So everybody is going to remember the last thing they saw of you. So if you didn't run out your last hit, then what you do once, you do always. And I think that you got to be all in.
Last quick point, Steve, on that. In conjunction with that, so Ryan Brownlee from the ABCA was on the show, and that episode dropped yesterday. He told the story of Nick Castellanos, who fell out of favor a little bit with the Phillies, but I think he was playing in Cincinnati or some club prior, could have been at Cubs too. And it was Cubs because Joe Madden was a manager, and Castellanos would go to him and say, every day, every game, happy opening day, Skipper. Happy opening day. 162 games. What a mindset that is. Changed my perception of Nick, but happy opening day. How about that? So every day you go to work.
So you threw a name out there. I've got to tell you my quick Joe Madden story. So I'm working somewhere. There was a baseball clinic somewhere in the Allentown area. I don't know what the clinic was, but Joe was working for A-Tech. I was there. We stood in a booth all day talking baseball. I learned more in one day than I probably would in my lifetime. So I have this habit. As soon as I got out of there, before I got in the car to drive home, I wrote him a thank you note and put it in the mail. The note that I got back is, Steve, you really pissed me off. You responded before I could. No one's ever done that. So that was my Joe Madden experience. And
that's great.
What a great guy. He was just awesome. We're going to do this again. This is too much fun. But so people want to get to you first, website.
It's CoachTimNeiman.com and email address, CoachNeiman@gmail. Can get me there as well. No problem. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, so they can find me there too.
And the podcast on Spotify, everywhere.
Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you're watching, you'll find it.
And the official name of the podcast?
Straight Lines.
Straight Lines. Okay, so it's probably the only one. I can tell you if you just start typing Tim Neiman in, he is the most famous Tim Neiman in the world. And I'm going to fill out the request on your website to appear on your podcast sometime. I would love to do that.
We'll make it happen.
And I will try not to talk baseball, but it's hard for me, a baseball fan, to get a great baseball coach and not ask baseball questions. But I really appreciate the way you related it all to business, as my audience is looking for. And they're all athletes that run businesses, and they're saying, okay, there is a direct connection. It is the best thing your kids can do is to play sports. So
thank you for
Thank you very much, Coach.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to Paradigm Playbook. Explore more at ParadigmPlaybook.com. Want to be a playmaker? Contact StephenJCook.com. Share this episode to spread the word about sports industry opportunities. See you next week.